hitting the button at the right time. You should jump into a game and practice this as much as you can, because a lot of times if you medium vault when you could have fast vault, it means that you're going to take a hit from the killer that you could have avoided. Your hitbox will linger longer and you're more exposed for getting hit by the killer, and this includes one-shot downs like chainsaws. So when you can, practice fast vaulting. The easiest way to remember it is to try and line up with the center of the window the best that you can, and then hit the button at the absolute last second. You will get a prompt down below that changes from vault to running vault, and when you see this, you can hit it and get over the window. But generally, just keep in the back of your mind that if you line up with the window in the center of it at the best that you can, you're running, and you hit it at the last possible second, you will most likely get the fast vault, but experiment with what works for you. Tip number 9 is a bit of a controversial one, but I want to throw this out there. Don't be afraid to throw pallets. There's a little bit of this elitist mentality within the community, especially with really skilled survivors, that if you throw pallets early, you're wasting. This can be true, but a lot of this is just generally people being very braggy about how long they can loop a killer around an area before having to use the pallets. Now, there are some pallets in the game that are referred to as god pallets, which means that they're just really good and it can be looped on for a long time. But depending on where you are in the game and how many pellets are left, it can be fine to throw a pallet right when you get to it, because you are wasting the killer's time. And realistically, if you're with a good group of survivors, getting 5 generators done doesn't actually take that long. So if you throw a couple pallets because you want to extend the chase for as long as possible, and this means that your team can get 1 or 2 generators in the process, don't feel bad about throwing a pallet right away. You have to be able to waste the killer's time. And as you get better at the game, you will be able to extend the loops longer and longer without having to throw a pallet, but don't let the community berate you into not throwing pallets because you're wasting them. What's worse is getting caught right away without having to burn the killer's time. In fact, it can be just fine if you ran and burned every pallet on the map, because if your other 3 teammates were actually doing generators, by the time you throw the last pallet, the gates will probably be open anyway. Tip number 10 is an important one, and this is something you should think about every time you get to a generator. Have an escape plan in your mind always. So when you land on a generator or you're going to do an objective like a totem, look around and decide, where would I go if the killer showed up right now? Especially now that Ghostface has been added and we have a lot more stealth killers in the game, like Wraith and Tier 1 Myers, you have to be careful that sometimes the killer is just going to happen upon you right away, and you have to know where you're going to go if that happens. If you're on a generator that is in the middle of a barren wasteland, there's no pallets, there's no windows, you're going to get caught with nowhere to go. But if you look at your escape plan before the killer shows up, you'll be able to react immediately when they do and get to an area that you can actually use to loop them for a good amount of time. Think to yourself when you get to a generator, I'm going to go to this pallet and try and work it as long as I can if the killer does show up. And this can be a lifesaver when you get stuck. Tip number 11 is you can see if you are affected by other perks by the icon in the corner of your screen. Things like borrowed time, which when a survivor unhooks you, you can take a free hit without going down. Will make it, which means that a teammate will heal you faster if they just unhooked you, and all the killer debuffs as well. So keep an eye out for the icons that appear in the bottom right corner of the screen, letting you know when you have these benefits. Specifically borrowed time, because that means that you know that you can take a free shot before running away, and sometimes that can save you and the person that unhooked you as well. Tip number 12 is an important one, and that is to keep track of generators that are currently being worked on, and try to hard focus on generators until they're actually completed. I see a lot of survivors that will see the killer come by, run away to the entire other side. Side of the map and then start a brand new generator, and they keep doing this over and over and never actually finish a generator that has progress on it. Make sure that if you get chased away from a generator, you try to work your way back to it to finish it, so you actually get that out of the way without having to start a new generator, and especially if they kick it and it starts regressing and you lose all that progress. And tip number 13 is a big one. Be wary of getting into 3-gen scenarios. rules. So what is a 3-gen scenario? There are 7 generators on the map, and you have to fix 5 of them to get out. This means that when you have 1 generator left to do, there are 3 generators on the map that you can choose from. A 3-gen scenario is when you only have 3 generators left, and they're all right next to each other. So what you want to think about as you start the game is try to spread out the generators that you're fixing. In fact, going for the hardest generators first at the start of the game when there's more pallets up and a lot more opportunities for looping is a great idea. Look for generators that are in the middle of the map, that are really easy defensible areas that when the killer is distracted at the beginning of the game, you can get those hard generators done quickly. You don't want to leave yourself in a position where you're doing generators right next to each other, and then when you have 1 generator left to get, all the 3 that are left on the map are literally within a stone's throw away, and the killer can just police them back and forth, and you won't be able to get much progress on them. So think about what generators you're doing and when, and try to get the harder ones done first so that when you get to the end of the game, the generators are far apart and they can't defend all of them at once. This will prevent you from getting into really difficult late game scenarios where the killer can just go back and forth and patrol and prevent you from finishing the game.
And that's it for 13 tips to instantly improve at Dead by Daylight. I want to take a moment to sincerely thank you for watching this video and being here with me. If you did like the video, do me a favor and hit that like button down below.
What's going on, guys, girls, and others? Schmulty here, bringing you an honest guide to Dead by Daylight. The game where you either play as a survivor, desperately trying to repair generators and escape, or the merciless killer, whose only objective is to hook and sacrifice survivors to the all-seeing entity. Not much is known about this entity other than it basically being a manifestation of pure evil that cannot be seen, only felt. Kinda like the dark side of the Force in Star Wars, or crippling anxiety. Regardless, you're not here to learn about the intricate lore of Dead by Daylight, of which there isn't much, so I'll get straight to the point. This video will be from the survivor perspective, as more people likely play this role, and I find it easiest to improve on your killer if you understand how a good survivor thinks. Of course, this does go both ways, which is why I suggest playing both roles, and watching my follow-up killer guide sometime in the next 6 months. As a survivor, your main goal is obviously to
blow up and then act like I don't know nobody.
but really, fix 5 generators, power the exit gates, and escape. But assuming the killer actually has a few wrinkles on their brain, it's not going to be quite that easy. Game to game, you'll have to heal your teammates and unhook them, perhaps constantly, as well as be on the lookout for totems to cleanse. Not to mention, actually run away from and dodge the maniac with the chainsaw or 8-foot sword, commonly referred to as looping, which I will go over later. Starting out, your first choice is going to be which one of these ugly little chicken nuggets to level up and play as. All survivors in the game have the same movement speed, access to the same items, and die just as fast. The key difference is in the perks, of which there are a figurative fuck ton, so I won't be going over everything in this video. However, there are some better choices in the starting 7 as far as perks go. At the top of the list for me would be Meg. Her 3 teachable perks include Quick and Quiet, Sprint Burst, and Adrenaline, all of which are focused on getting the hell away from the killer. Quick and Quiet will make fast vaulting or quickly getting into a locker completely silent. If you manage to break line of sight with the killer, this can be useful to make a quick getaway without it being obvious where you went. Sprint Burst is pretty self-explanatory. You get a burst of speed for 3 seconds to gain distance on the killer. Try to use this wisely and sprint for a jungle gym or building that you can use to loop the killer instead of just sprinting as far as you can in one direction. If the killer follows you, they will catch up. You can only run for so long.
For no particular reason, I decided to go for a little run. So I ran to the end of the road, and when I got there, I thought maybe I'd run to the end of town.
Be sure to use this wisely, as you'll be exhausted for a full minute afterwards and have to recover the ability. Sprinting will pause the recovery, which you can use to your advantage a split second before it's finished, to go for a save and be ready to dart if necessary. Adrenaline is a fantastic late game perk. Once the last generator is completed and the exit gates are powered, you will heal 1 full health state and gain 150% movement speed for 5 seconds. This can be a literal lifesaver if you're injured on the last gen, or looping the killer to destroy.
Ah!